A few weeks ago I made a YouTube video about ukulele bass strings, and in that video I demonstrated a jazz walking bass line. Now since I released that video I've had comments asking me if I could make another video explaining how I constructed that jazz walking bass line. I also had a really interesting email raising some important questions about the potential pitfalls in playing jazz bass. So if you want to understand more about how to create your own jazz walking bass lines, then watch on, as the questions that I answer might be similar to some of the ones that you've got yourself. Now if you already play blues walking bass lines, then moving on to jazz walking bass lines is the next logical step. I'll now play you a snippet of that video so you know what people are talking about. That walking bass line I play follows a standard jazz bass blues, okay, a 12-bar blues. I'll explain more about that in a minute. I've written this walking bass line and other information in this video down on a PDF. You can get that for free by clicking the link below this video in the description. The first part of that email that was sent to me about this walking bass line was, I simply cannot hear the chord sequence when the instruments are playing together, when they often appear out of harmony with each other. To my ear, your bass line sounds like a random walk. I can see a few chromatic approaches to what must be root notes, but the roots don't stand out and the other instruments seem to ignore them. And this is the bit I particularly liked. What's wrong with me? Is there a way through this maze? Well, I feel your pain. Often jazz can be hard to understand initially. Sometimes you only have a few instruments playing. Sometimes you don't really even hear the chordal parts. You might just have a solo and a walking bass line, similar to the way that Bach did it in his two-part harmony. So this means it is difficult to kind of understand what's going on with the chord progression, and there can be dissonance as well. But once you understand the framework of the songs, which are the chord progressions, then you'll have something to work with. The first important thing to know about playing jazz walking bass lines is that the rest of the band are often playing quite manic lines and they're playing quite syncopated, so bass has got to lay down the steady 4 beats in a bar. You get that walking rhythm, okay? So often the rhythm's quite simple. You've got to lay these 4 beats down in a bar, but it's the note choices that get a bit more tricky. If you as the bass player started playing syncopated rhythms and complicated rhythms, then it would just turn into free jazz carnage. Let's now look at the chord progression behind my walking bass line. So it follows a 12-bar blues, but it's a jazz 12-bar blues, so that just means there's some extra chords in there from the standard blues 12-bar. We've got a bar of A7, a bar of D7, 2 bars of A7, 2 bars of D7, a bar of A7, so up to now it's like a standard 12-bar blues. And then we've got these extra chords put in, half a bar of C sharp minor 7, half a bar of F sharp minor 7, and then it changes slightly here. We've got what's called a 2-5-1, so in A, chord 2 is B, chord 5 is E, and chord 1 is A. So we've got a bar of B minor 7, a bar of E7, and then we've got a turnaround, okay? But if I simplify and strip back this progression, this is what we get. Okay, we get a bar of A7, a bar of D7, 2 bars of A7, 2 bars of D7, 2 bars of A7. So these first 8 bars are exactly the same as a 12-bar blues. And then we've got this 2-5-1. So 2-5-1s are very common in jazz, okay? It just means chord 2, chord 5 and chord 1. Okay, so we're in the key of A major. So we've got a bar of B minor 7, a bar of E7 and a bar of A7, okay? But we put these turnarounds in. If we go back to the original chord progression, we've got A, F sharp, B, E. Okay, some tunes, rhythm changes, just use these turnarounds for most of the progression, okay? So you can play it like this as well. It's that shape there, A, F sharp, B, E. Okay, so we've got that turnaround there, okay? Is actually a 1-6-2-5 turnaround, okay? 1-6-2-5-1. So we end up back on A7 again. So we've got a slightly different sequence here, but this is a basic jazz blues sequence. So if you know the 12-bar blues sequence, then you just learn this sequence and find out where the different chords are. Often if you've got a jazz tune, you'll play the head, which is the melody, and then it will go into this standard progression for the solos. If you want a more detailed video about jazz chord progressions, then click here and you'll get to video 167, the evolution of the jazz blues. If you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to subscribe to my channel. You can do that by pressing the red subscribe button on the corner of the screen. And if you click the bell and select all, then you'll get notified as soon as I release a new video. We're now going to play a simple walking bass line to the chord progression just with root notes to help you to learn the progression. When you're playing the root notes, you can play them in different octaves. So A, for example, you can play here on the E string, or you can play it on the D string, okay? So you can choose the octave where you play these root notes. I've written this exercise on the free PDF. It's called Simple Walking Line with Root Notes. So I suggest that you play that first and then just play through the chord chart, okay? So you can start picking where you're going to play the root notes. So we're just simply playing through the progression. So A, 4 beats in a bar, and D, A, D, A, C sharp, F sharp, B, E, and then A, F sharp, B, E. Okay, so with these root notes you can kind of hear what's going on with the progression. Okay, I'm now going to play that through with a backing track so you can hear it. You can purchase that backing track if you want. The link's below in the description, so it helps you to kind of put some context to your walking bass lines. In the email that I got from my subscriber, there was also a question about dissonance in jazz. So the question was, I get that the bassist can construct a jazz line around the triad with some walk ups and walk downs just as in blues, but the problem is with other instruments playing dissonant notes, it's very off-putting, making you think you're wrong. How to overcome that? That's a very good question, as you often hear dissonance in jazz and it's hard to understand, but really dissonance causes tension, and music is all about tension and release, especially in jazz. So that's the kind of purpose for dissonance. So you will hear certain notes that cause these kind of clashes. If we pick notes like the root, the third and the fifth in our walking lines, then these sound very kind of nice. They don't cause dissonance, but if we start to use notes like the seventh possibly, and then we get on to the extensions like the ninth, the 11th and the 13th, we wouldn't really use those in our walking lines, but when you hear those, or when you hear notes that are chromatic outside of the key, then these notes will cause dissonance. And by the way, we call a ninth, not a second, because it's an extension note. When we're building a chord, we build in thirds, so you get the root, then you get the third, then the fifth, then the seventh, then the ninth, then the 11th and the 13th. It kind of stacks up. Okay, these are extension notes, the 9th, 11th and the 13th, because they're above the octave. That's how we build them. So it's a kind of technicality, really. It's a jazz theory thing. But in practice, the 9th is the same note as the second. It's normally just higher above the octave. So when we create our jazz walking bass lines, we need to really strongly outline the harmony for the rest of the band. So we mainly use roots, thirds and fifths on the strong beats of the bar, which are beats 1 and 3. And in the middle, beats 2 and 4, we'll put in chromatic notes, walk up notes, that kind of thing. So chromatic note is a note outside of the key. Okay, so these are weaker beats, doesn't really matter, but the ear will be drawn to beats 1 and 3 for the harmony. Okay. If you want a more in-depth video about constructing walking bass lines, then click here. You'll get to video number 173, Simple Walking Bass Formula. We'll now look at my specific walking bass line. I'll chat through it and go over why I chose some of those notes. So we start on A. So this is the first bar. Okay, so what I've done now, I've just used the A octave. And then that's the fifth, E, and then I've just stepped down to D. Okay, so from the fifth, E, just step down to D, okay? So you want to get your walking lines to be nice and smooth like a melody. So you don't want to be jumping all over the place all the time. I've got that jump there, but then we come back in. So if you've got a jump, it's better to come inside, and then we come down and then D, okay? And the D bar. Okay, all I've done there is outlined the arpeggio, root, third, fifth, and then it's going to be A in the next bar. So I've just stepped down and then back to A again, okay? And then that bar of A, that's just root, fifth, root, and then chromatic note stepping down and back to A again, okay? And then here. Okay, so that's just an arpeggio. Root, third, fifth, and then stepping down to D. Okay, so you often use these chromatic notes to step down to the next root note or step up to the next root note, okay? And you've here, I've put these extra notes in here, these eighth notes, swung eighth notes. Okay. Just repeated notes there, just to give a little bit more of a sort of bounce to the walking line. And then on the D, so that's just root, fifth, okay? D, A, D, A. Very simple there. And then this bar here, so I've just got 2 beats of D and 2 beats of D sharp. Now that's a D sharp diminished chord. This is more kind of a slightly more advanced harmony, but you can drop in these diminished chords, okay? You could do that on A as well. You could do A sharp, okay? This is an extra substitution chord, as they're called. Substitution chords are added in jazz just to make the progression more interesting, okay? So that's where that comes from. And then on A, so there I've actually started on the fifth. So sometimes when you're walking line, you don't always have to start on the root. Sometimes you start on the third or the fifth. And that's stepping down D, stepping down to C sharp, okay? So I've actually gone up to the A root in beat 3, okay? Okay, so this bar of C sharp minor 7 and F sharp 7, I've got those pickup notes, they're kind of. But what I'm doing here for the F sharp is I'm using the tritone substitution, okay? So C sharp minor 7, F sharp 7 to B7 or B minor 7, that's a 2-5-1, okay? Because we're going to B, 2 is C sharp, 5 is F sharp, B is 1, okay? So instead of chord 5, we can put a tritone substitution. All that is the flat fifth, okay? So we've got F sharp here, that's the fifth. The flat fifth is C. So I've just used C there, okay? So you can put these substitutions in, and the reason why it works really nicely is you kind of step down C sharp, C, B, okay? Down to that B instead of, okay? It just makes a smoother line. And I'm just using these open A's for the kind of pickup notes. Okay, so that's a tritone substitution. You might have heard of those before. And then from B minor 7 to E, that's the blues walk up. We're just going from B to E, and we're just using the 3 notes below E. Okay, you can always do that when moving to different chords. And then stepping down from E, that's just a scale pattern on A, okay, moving to A. And then when we come to this bar here, we've got, instead of the F sharp 7, I've put the C again, the tritone, and then we've got B, so we've got A, C, B, and then B flat there. Now that's the tritone for E, okay? So that's a nice smooth line there. Okay, so we use these substitution chords to make our lines smoother. Okay, sometimes the soloists will put in their own substitution chords and you won't necessarily play them. They all kind of fit above this kind of basic chord progression, but that's when it potentially causes dissonance, a bit of dissonance there, and that's where you hear the kind of clashes. But if you were just purely playing wrong notes and any progression, you would hear it. Okay, it's just sometimes hard to hear exactly what's going on with the chord progression. Well, that was a quick run through of the note choices that I made for that walking bass line. I know I rushed through it. If you want a more in-depth look at how to improvise and create your own jazz walking bass lines, then check out my jazz course, which is called Walkin Thru Jazz. So in that we deep dive the jazz blues progression, so you'll have a greater understanding of harmony when you finish that course, and you'll also be able to have the tools to create your own authentic sounding jazz walking bass lines. So you should be able to click here now for the course, or there's a link below in the description. I'm now going to play through my walking bass line with the backing track so you can hear how my note choices work with the band. Remember that walking bass line is on the free PDF that you can get below. Now I know I've covered a lot in this video, a lot of harmony as well, as jazz is really complicated, but hopefully you picked up the kind of gist of how you start to think about creating your own jazz walking bass lines. The more you play jazz, the more you'll understand it. And you'll start to be able to understand this dissonance, and you'll start to be able to hear the progressions within the tunes. You might not be a die-hard jazz fan, but playing and learning about jazz on the bass is always going to give you a deeper understanding of music and make you a better player. So what I suggest you do now is download that free PDF. You can purchase the backing track as well if you want something to play to, and work on these walking bass lines, study my walking bass line, and do what I did in the video and try and work out why I made those note choices. Play through with my walking line and then try with the backing track with just the chord progression. See if you can play the root notes first and then start to put some chromatic notes in, some walk-up notes, and start creating your own lines. I'd love to hear what you thought of this lesson. Let me know below in the comments. Also, if you've got a favourite jazz tune with some jazz walking bass in it, then let me know below as well, and I might make a lesson on that. Don't forget you can help me out a lot by liking and sharing this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel here on YouTube as well. And if you felt you got value out of this lesson, you can always buy me a coffee. The link's below this video or on the bottom of the screen. Don't forget to check out my website, which is gbshed.com. I've got details of my courses, my bass membership, and you can get some merch. You can buy these t-shirts. So that's gbshed.com. This is Greg from Greg's Bass Shed. Hopefully see you very soon in the next video.